Coming up on Jerusalem Dateline, Prime Minister Netanyahu undeterred after a failed assassination attempt. And Defense Minister Gallant reports significant gains in Lebanon. Plus, Amiad Cohen with a strategy for battling Hezbollah, with the endgame being safety once more in Israel's north. And a roll call of nations. Friends of Israel from around the world show support at the Tower of David. All this and more coming up on this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Hello and welcome to this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Chris Mitchell. After Hezbollah's recent failed assassination attempt, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said he and Israel will not be deterred. Here's the latest on that and other breaking news. Iran is denying it tried to kill Benjamin Netanyahu after a drone struck his private home in Caesarea this weekend.
3 unmanned aerial vehicles penetrated from Lebanon. 2 of them were shot down, and the third hit a building in Caesarea in an attempt to hit the prime minister.
Netanyahu and his wife Sarah were not home at the time. After the attack, he went on social media.
And we're continuing our battle with Iran's other terrorist proxies. We're going to win this war. So will something deter you? No.
Israel is blaming the Islamic regime in Iran and says it will pay. It's already expected to retaliate soon for Iran firing 181 ballistic missiles at the Jewish state on October 1st. In the aftermath of the elimination of Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar, hundreds of Hamas terrorists are shown surrendering in this video from the northern Gaza Strip. Israel sent thousands of leaflets encouraging Hamas terrorists to surrender, and the former CEO of SodaStream offered $100,000 and safe passage to anyone releasing a live hostage. A top Hamas official says the terror group isn't giving up and insists no hostages will be freed till the IDF leaves Gaza.
The Hamas movement will continue with the covenant of the founding leaders.
That covenant, outlined in the Hamas charter, calls for exterminating all Jews in Israel and wiping out their nation. He said Hamas will keep trying to commit mass slaughters like October 7th. Meanwhile, in Lebanon, the IDF is pummeling Hezbollah infrastructure, training bases, tunnels, and says it won't stop.
So far, more than 1,500 Hezbollah operatives have been eliminated. We are not stopping. We are at war and attacking all the places that Hezbollah uses for terrorism.
Overnight, the IDF targeted Hezbollah financial institutions to rob the terror group of its economic oxygen. In the U.S., presidential candidate Kamala Harris is rejecting the claim. She believes the IDF is committing genocide in Gaza. During a campaign stop, she responded to a pro-Palestinian protester who accused the administration of not speaking about genocide. She said, "What he is talking about, it's real, and I respect his voice." Former Israeli Ambassador Michael Oren called what Harris said a very dangerous precedent and was the first time that the White House has been linked to a libel that threatens Israel's legitimacy. While the U.S. Secretary of State makes his 11th visit to the regions since the start of the war began on October 7th, Netanyahu emphasizes that Israel is fighting for its existence.
Today, the great nation of Israel shows the world how a nation needs to act when it's facing a danger to its existence, and looking the face of danger in the eye with peace of mind, and knowing what must be done and what can be done, and to be willing to enter the fray.
Israeli leaders point to progress on both the northern and southern fronts. Israel's defense minister Yoav Gallant visited soldiers fighting Hezbollah along the Israeli-Lebanese border and told them Hezbollah is collapsing. The IDF says it's killed some 2,000 Hezbollah terrorists and wiped out 70% of their rockets. The IDF recently declassified intelligence about deceased Hassan Nasrallah's bunker. Israel did not attack the target because it's under a hospital in Beirut. IDF spokesman Daniel Hagari says there's still hundreds of millions of dollars in cash and gold inside.
Directly under El Sahel Hospital, in the heart of Beirut, there are hundreds of millions of dollars in cash and gold inside the bunker right now. I'm calling on the Lebanese government, Lebanese authorities, and the international organizations. Don't allow Hezbollah to use the money for terror and to attack Israel.
Israeli cabinet ministers reportedly have been briefed that its forces will soon launch a significant attack on Iran. But a possible leak in the U.S. has let some plans for its preparations slip. The White House is investigating how intelligence documents analyzing Israel's plans appeared on the Telegram messaging app Middle East Spectator, trying to determine whether the information was leaked or hacked.
We're deeply concerned, and the president remains deeply concerned, about any leakage of classified information into the public domain. That is not supposed to happen, and it's unacceptable when it does.
Former U.S. Ambassador to Israel David Friedman charged the administration with undermining Israel. While world leaders are calling for restraint and Iran's leaders promise to retaliate against an attack, some Iranian citizens are hopeful Israel will take action.
They're hoping that attack from Israel would be the tipping point for their nation.
Pastor Adam Gabelli works with many Iranians inside Iran and Canada and tells CBN News how they're praying about Israel's upcoming attack.
I can't divulge many details because some of the ones that are in the land, we have to protect their identity. But they are really praying that Israel would be that force that would overturn what they've been suffering for the past decades.
Up next, a strategy for battling Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. Analysis from Amiad Cohen. As we reported in today's update, Israel has made great strides in eliminating Hezbollah's stronghold in southern Lebanon. But northern Israel is still not safe, and evacuated families cannot return yet. Reserve Major Amiad Cohen spoke with us a few months ago about a strategy he proposes that still seems relevant. Take a look. Amiad Cohen, great to be with you here on CBN News. You're head of the Herut Center, a conservative think tank here in Jerusalem, and you wrote an article called The Last Lebanon War in Tablet magazine. Tell us your main message here, why you wrote it.
So Israel has a habit to live in a Groundhog Day in front of its enemies. We're in Gaza again and again, going back and forth and raiding in Gaza in the past 20 years and having a deep conflict there. And the same thing in Lebanon since the 70s. We're again in a raiding structure against Lebanon with no real end game and outcome. And every time we're getting stronger and Hezbollah is getting stronger. We need to end that Groundhog Day once and for all. And the only way to do that is by understanding the strategic, decisive points at our enemies, how they think about it. And the most important thing for Hezbollah in Lebanon is their land and territory. And there's one thing, we can't end the war in the same starting point as we did in the past. So the end game of the Lebanese war, instead of having a third Lebanese war and a fourth one and a fifth one, we have to end this now, the last Lebanese war, with the Israeli border moving to the Litani River. There's two basic reasons for that. A, they need to lose territory and understand we're not playing, you can't go back to square one after starting a war and attacking Israel on October 8th. The second thing is there's no territorial border between Israel and Lebanon today. The border today, the Lebanese Hezbollah, actually the Iranians, if you understand what's the power structure, have an elevated ground over the Israeli towns in the northern border. That's why they are able to shoot anti-tank rockets and to raid. And that's what we're afraid of. That's why we're going to protect the northern border, to take over and occupy these cities and destroy like they did on October 7th in the south. The Litani River, which is 20 kilometers to the north, is a border that is a barrier that can protect. It's a cliff of 400 meters tall that will protect us from the ground invasion of Hezbollah operatives. We will need to still protect ourselves from the rockets, but the only solution to end this conflict with a very decisive victory by Israel is to telling Hezbollah there's one end for this war. Israel's going to take territory from Hezbollah and from Lebanon and from Iran, and we will have a border to protect us.
Wow. You're not only the head of the Herut Center, but you're also a major in the reserves. You've been up there for 4 months, and you're heading back as well. What have you seen up there on the border?
So first of all, it's devastating to look at the cities that are deserted now, the Israeli cities. There's 82,000 Israeli refugees now left their houses, went back to different places and hotels in Israel, and the cities are deserted. That's a strategic mistake by Israel, and that's devastating. I lived in some of these cities in the past, and to see empty towns, you can't understand how it's a strategic loss for Israel in that perspective. The other part of it is I can see that Israel can win this war. We have a strong army, and people are afraid of the Iranian army, Hezbollah, on our border. They're good. I'm not underestimating them, but we're much better, we're much stronger. And this is a message the world needs to understand. Hezbollah is afraid of having a full-scale war with Israel, because at the end of the day, we have a strong army, we have a strong military industry, we have a stronger country, and we believe in what we do. We can win this war, and we will and should win this war. We don't want to have a war. We prefer them giving up. We cannot live with this kind of threat on our northern border. So Israel can win this war, should. The IDF is strong, the soldiers, the reserve armies, and the regular army. That's why we have the State of Israel, to prevent things like this, like the Holocaust happening here in Israel.
Final question, Amiad. What's your main message for not only Israel, but for people in the West right now?
The battle is not a battle between Israel and Iran. The battle is international between Western Jewish Christian ideas and moral arguments versus the Muslim, either the Sunni or the Shiites, jihad perspective, that they don't believe that about having, let's say, modern good moral life. And this is only the first attack. And if we, Israel, do not have a decisive victory here in the northern border and in Hamas and Gaza, this is only the beginning, and it will give them backwind for attacking the US and Europe and much more than that. Not Israel needs to win this war, but the West has to win this war, and that's why we need the West support, because this is the battle about the Jewish Christian tradition and values against the Muslim jihad who wants to destroy everything that the West built.
That's a very sobering, very important message for such a time as this. Amiad Cohen, great to be with you.
Thank you very much for having me.
Coming up, Christian friends standing in support of Israel. A special night at Jerusalem's Tower of David. Even though Israel faces war on 7 fronts, Christians are coming to Jerusalem in a show of unity during the biblical Feast of Tabernacles. They met at the Tower of David in the Old City. CBN Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl has that story.
Battling a fear of war and travel difficulty given airline cancellations, Christians still came to Israel to participate in this special celebration. They toured southern Israeli communities ravaged during the October 7th attack, heard from an IDF soldier, and on the 5th night of the feast, President Isaac Herzog welcomed them at the Tower of David Museum in Jerusalem.
In this time of so much grief, your gathering here says clearly and loudly, there is an answer to hatred. There is an answer to brutality. There is an answer to evil. Like so many Christian communities throughout the world, you've stood with the people of Israel in our hour of darkness.
Despite the war, more than 500 Christians from some 50 nations have come to Israel to stand with the Jewish people and say, you're not alone.
It's the largest solidarity mission to Israel since the war began on October 7th last year, and it's a Christian solidarity mission.
David Parsons of the International Christian Embassy, Jerusalem, tells CBN News the Christian message is clear.
We want to tell the people of Israel that all these charges of genocide against them, all the accusations and people trying to shame them or anyone who supports them, and we're going to stand here beside them, knowing they are fighting a just war in a moral way.
The ICEJ has held these annual celebrations since 1980, with thousands attending each year. Parsons, though, sees this year's gathering as unique.
This is a Gideon's army. When the Lord told Gideon, send the people home, he said, if they're afraid, go home. So we have a high caliber of people of faith who have come here to make this statement of support for Israel.
Delegations from 54 countries, including some with no formal diplomatic ties to Israel, carried their flags in the roll call of the nations. It also included an Iranian Christian. They joined together in an original song about freedom for the hostages. Based on Psalm 126, the lyrics dream about how the people of Israel will rejoice when the captives are set free. Knesset member and former Jerusalem mayor Nir Barkat saluted the Christians on behalf of the government.
I think the ICEJ is one of the well-known secrets of Israel's success. The support you give us, in good times as in hard times today, should not be taken for granted, and I'm here to salute you.
This year's largest delegation came from Germany.
We have 65 people attending. And why are we coming? We want to show solidarity in these critical days for Israel, for the Jewish people, and for the state of Israel.
Gottfried Bühler, who works with ICEJ in Germany, says while they may have fear within the crowd, as Christians who trust in the Bible, they were bold enough to come.
Germany, we have our history with the Jewish people 80 years ago. And these people, they are taking responsibility, and they don't want that the history is coming back. So they are coming.
Vivian Myberg of the ICEJ South Africa says the anti-Israel stance of her government doesn't represent all the people. She says they want Israel to know that they have many friends in South Africa.
We are standing with you, and we continue to pray for you, to pray for your hostages to come home, to pray for the protection of your soldiers in Gaza and the northern border. And we know that God is watching over you. We know that He is working out His plans and purposes in the nation of Israel today. And we are just blessed to be being part of that.
Julie Stahl, CBN News, the Tower of David Museum, Jerusalem's Old City.
Still ahead, shedding light on Christianity's beginnings in Israel, the Megiddo Mosaic. An ancient discovery is shedding light on the early church. The Megiddo Mosaic dates back nearly 2,000 years. Experts believe it decorated one of the earliest Christian worship sites in Israel. CBN News Washington correspondent Michelle London takes us to the Museum of the Bible to show us this foundation of the faith.
Here in the nation's capital, we're already seeing evidence of how this beautifully preserved 1,800-year-old Megiddo Mosaic is bringing the start of Christianity back to life. Since its recent premiere here at the Museum of the Bible, curators say it's already drawn in thousands of visitors from all over the world.
How we now have rediscovered it and can witness Christianity so far back.
Behind each of these original artifacts lies a powerful story reaching across generations.
It's kind of crazy, and how they just finally discovered it, which is pretty significant, I think.
From teenagers to history teachers.
This exhibit, for sure, has been my favorite part.
We saw an eagerness to learn.
What we teach and something that is an artifact, something that is real, and something that most importantly is interesting, is really profound for students.
When I heard about this mosaic and read the story behind it, I got the same kind of chills and the same kind of goosebumps.
Historians like the Museum of the Bible Scholars Initiative director, Dr. Bobby Duke, described the Megiddo Mosaic as the greatest discovery in Israel since the Dead Sea Scrolls.
What's something people don't know about this exhibit or may not know?
I would say the question we get asked the most often, is it real? It does date back to the 3rd century, AD 230.
A period before Christianity became an official religion of the Roman Empire. The Megiddo Mosaic features a table used for communion and a design showing 2 fish, early symbols of Christianity, with handcrafted geometric patterns.
To make the designs that we see even around this flooring here, I mean, that takes hours and hours and hours.
The mosaic likely decorated one of the oldest Christian prayer halls in Megiddo, a city located in Canaan. In the 1940s, this site of ancient worship became buried under a newly maximum security prison, where it remained for 60 years. Then, in 2005, archaeologists accidentally rediscovered it.
They're wanting to do some construction. And whenever you do construction in Israel, you have to do a salvage archaeological dig to make sure that you're not constructing over something significant.
They carefully excavated the mosaic, hiding it securely in northern Israel, until flying it here for a first public appearance.
Show us some of the exciting features, the inscriptions.
So the first one right here is dedicated to a man named Gallant.
Historians say he was a Roman centurion who helped fund the mosaic floor and table, a rare show of unity between Romans and Christians. The second inscription describes some key women in early Christianity, while the third marks history.
The table is dedicated to the God Jesus Christ. Now this phrase, God Jesus Christ, is in the fifth line of the inscription, and it is actually in a shortened form, so the letters that have the lines over them, it is actually a respectful way to write those words.
Dr. Duke believes these early writings are some of the first to show belief in the deity of Jesus, with this inscription from a Christian woman identified as a Keptis that reads, God Jesus Christ. The Megiddo Mosaic is one he hopes will open up a world of possibilities for future discoveries.
I think the thing that excites me the most is we never know what the next excavation is going to show and demonstrate. No one before 2005 would have ever dreamed we would have found something as beautiful and significant as this. So what's around the corner?
The Megiddo Mosaic exhibit is on display here at the Museum of the Bible through July 2025. And after that, curators say it may visit some other U.S. museums before returning home to be memorialized close to its original site in northern Israel.
The yearly Jerusalem parade brings visitors to the city to celebrate the Feast of Tabernacles with rejoicing, singing, and dancing. It's a wonderful time. And the largest solidarity mission since October 7th, more than 500 Christians from 54 nations came to join the celebration and say to the Jewish people, you are not alone. Check it out.
No matter what media says, there are people who stand with you. There are Christians who are praying for you.
So happy. It was so beautiful. They came here to support Israel. They were showing their love by singing and dancing. So great to see people supporting Israel. It just uplifts the whole morale.
Well, that's all for this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Thanks for joining us. And please remember to pray for Israel, for the return of the hostages, and for the safety of IDF soldiers and all those in harm's way. I'm Chris Mitchell. For all of us here at the Jerusalem Bureau, Hag Sukkot Sameach, Happy Feast of Tabernacles. We'll see you next time on Jerusalem Dateline.